Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Up Supercast, the only podcast on the internet where five guys talk about video games. I am your host, Will. Joining me today, the man of many names, Muzi, Muzamil, Muzzy. Introduce yourself, my dude.
You know, I prefer just Up Supercast, but we'll work on it.
Yep, this is the Regis method. Air your grievances on air. It's a smart plan, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. That way people can know and be like, look, they'll look out for him like, wow, he keeps saying bud,
Tweet
that's
at
annoying.
Jump Up Supercast on Twitter. Following up after Muzamil. Fly Eagles Fly, it's Brandon.
Oh my god, why would you say that?
It's fine.
That's the worst way to start.
No, I think it's a good...
You're going to trigger me right off the bat?
Brandon's a Patriots fan. Saf.
What, that it?
Yeah.
That's all I get for it.
Yeah,
Fucking Muzzy gets doxed with multiple names and Brandon gets a fucking football reference.
My favorite person, Noah.
Yay, I'm the favorite. Suck it!
He's making Saf look even worse. I'm into this.
Yeah, that's why we made the podcast. Some say we made this podcast to talk about video game news and the games we've been playing and to rank things arbitrarily. But we know better. It's just to be mean to Saf.
Yeah.
I don't consent to this.
As long as we can keep the veneer up, let's get into the news. Which is, like, looking at this week as a whole, I thought, we might not have anything to talk about to start off with. I was wrong. We were given kind gifts in terms of things that have happened this week. The biggest one, I would say, the leading one, would be a change to the Xbox Game Pass program. Now, if you don't know what that is, it is sort of like a Netflix of sorts for the Xbox specifically, where you could get old games, pay $10 a month, so it's $120 a year, and you could get a lot of 360 games, a couple of 1 to 2 year old games on it they can download as opposed to PlayStation Now, which is the alternative on the PlayStation. But the big news, Phil Spencer just walks up on Twitter and is like, "What's up, everybody? Now with Game Pass, day and date, every single first-party game will be on Game Pass, launching with Sea of Thieves in March." It's a big deal.
Man.
It is, yeah.
Phil Spencer's beautiful. I love him.
So, this Game Pass, does that
Yes.
allow you to download, like, any number of games? Is there no limits to it?
There is no limit. It is a smorgasbord. There is already, I think, I saw over 300 games on the Game Pass service.
Wow.
So
Well,
you
it's
can
about
download.
140, but yeah.
Yes, they're adding it up over time. There's counting Xbox One compatibility is like 360 compatibility is the weird part of it, but still pretty crazy. And you can download all of it, and they will be there forever. So like Sea of Thieves, which is launching in March, is going to be the first one we get here, but we're getting it from that point onward. So if you get it a year from now, you can download Sea of Thieves. If you get it a year from now when Halo comes out, you can get Halo the same day too. And they said that in the release. They said Halo, Gears, Forza, all the big ones. You're there. Where there's no exceptions to this rule. It's crazy. I mean, like I said, it's crazy. But it made me think of a couple of things, right? And you can sort of bounce off your own thoughts off this. This is a move that a person that is in second place would make. Which has been a lot of Xbox, I feel, like this generation. Not in a bad way, but just like Xbox clearly does not have the studio output to like try to catch up in terms of first-party releases. They've been trying more with business practices and with like on the actual console end of things. This sort of feels like the next step after we have now 360 backwards compatibility, then the original Xbox backwards compatibility, then everything is cross-play with PC, and now we have this. Like, their positioning is now we are the like more economical place to play, even if we don't have all the games. And how do you think that that fits into the overall market?
So I kind of think that this is something like uniquely Microsoft could do, you know, because their first party output is not the strongest, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and bad. In general, like right now, there's PS4, Xbox One. They're kind of the same box, right? Except just PS4. At least this was true for most of the generation. PS4 and Xbox One were the same thing, but PS4 just did everything better, right? Like before the One X, things ran better. More exclusives. It was cheaper for a good time, whatever, right? And now, kind of Microsoft is like, okay, well, we have our first-party games that don't really, they sell okay, right? But our first-party games don't have the selling power they used to, right? We're not putting it out at a really fast enough pace, and we're just a worse alternative to PS4. Well, here's this pretty economical service where you get all our first. Now our box looks more attractive because before, where I wasn't really gonna pick up Sea of Thieves, now I'm like, okay, well, I might as well subscribe to this thing for the price of 2 full-price games. I get 3-4 big games every year, plus whatever else is on the platform.
It's a
I
good
have more reason to use my
incentive
Xbox.
to disguise the fact that they're extremely desperate right now.
I wouldn't say they're extremely desperate. They're still making...
Because this type of service has already been tried. Like, with the GameSpot, they tried this with, like, Power Pass.
This is really different.
This is really different.
It's almost...
I feel like this is
the only
on
difference,
a bigger
the
scale,
only
right?
difference is that the Power Pass system, they only allowed you to get 1 game a month.
What the fuck
Like, that's
is
the
Power
only
Pass?
difference.
Yeah, you should
GameSpot
explain
Power
that
Pass.
for people
Yeah.
that don't know what
So
that is.
it's basically the same shit, where it's like you pay a 6 months, well, almost the same shit. You pay for a 6 month subscription, £10 a month, $10 a month, which would be $60 for 6 months, and you get access to a huge library of games. Whereas like once every month, you get to pick a game and you play it and you return it to.
This isn't
GameSpot.
even close to that, Seth. This is like way better.
This is more
This is
like
$10 a
Netflix.
month. You
This
can
is-
cancel.
yeah.
I don't
anytime.
think you can overstate the digital factor in that though.
Yeah.
Like you can download, like with the one game thing was obviously a limiting factor, but 2, the act of getting in the mail, shipping it back, then like having a queue. Now you can queue up 5 games at once, right? Like you can just be like boom, 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 boom. I'm gonna hit all these.
Yeah, I don't feel like playing this anymore. Well, let me delete it. You're basically
Yeah.
just limited by your storage space, right?
Yeah,
you can
for
delete
real.
games
It's-
off and just put another whatever. It's pretty.
It's incredible. If you are gaming on a budget, you can't get any better than that.
Yeah, like this is the
$10
perfect thing
a
for
month.
people that don't like to spend a lot of money on games in general.
Yeah, $10 a month you can usually afford. I mean, people can afford it on Netflix, and there's people who have Netflix, Hulu, whatever. They have a ton of subscription services, right? Like people can afford $10 a month.
Now, I want to have a quick question because I think that this does show a difference in mentality that I think will be hard to go back on. In that, like, Xbox during the 360 generation, especially the original Xbox generation, did hang its hat on exclusives a fair amount, right? You bought an Xbox for Halo, right? You bought an Xbox, buy it for Fable, buy it for
Gears of War.
Gears of
Gears of
War
War.
when the 360 launched.
Yeah.
Now I think there's this acknowledgement that those are not the draws they used to be, that they do not have the clout they used to, and so now it's almost like get the Xbox and like we'll give you Halo, like we'll give you Gears, like we just want you in the ecosystem first and foremost. Do you think that's a move towards the next generation where they just want to get people back in that system that have dropped out this generation?
1000%.
yeah.
I think so. Because I mean, why else would they be bolstering up Xbox like this? You know, I think this is kind of a goodwill move. You know, like because this is a win for consumers easily, right? Like you can.
Oh, yeah, they've been doing it already too with backwards compatibility.
In a way that late gen PS3 where they offered PS Plus, right? Where it's like, hey, you give us $50 a year, you get 2 free games every month, or whatever it was when they did that, right?
Yes.
I think this is kind of the same deal where it's
Well, I mean,
like,
it's very funny because to go back to that PlayStation Plus thing, they started that essentially right around the time that they had the big outage, right? And so it was
Right.
a clear, like, here is this, like, cheaper deal to engender goodwill after we messed up. And while
Yeah.
this does feel 3 years later than the bad will was engendered, it is sort of that same thing from, like, their bad launch, right? That, like, I think that they were still, even now, feeling those effects.
yeah, I mean,
just
'cause
in
both
how they're in their
Xbox
market.
One and PS3 were really poor at the beginning of the generation, right? For just not just the outage, right? Just PS3 had a really rocky start.
Correct.
And like towards the end, that's when they started building that goodwill which really helped them with PS4. I think this is kind of the same thing, but it's kind of weird though because PS Plus was also kind of like a Trojan horse for paid online for the next console, right?
Correct.
Whereas this one is like now there's the expectation that I'm never gonna pay $60 for a Microsoft Studios game ever again.
That's what
You
I
know?
mean.
Well,
It's
unless you're me.
like when I first heard about this, my first thought was, this is not really that beneficial for Microsoft.
Sure.
It's like,
I agree.
especially
I
when
think
it's
that-
like on, like you getting new releases, day one releases, like what was that pirate game? Sea of Thieves.
See if the
Yeah.
Sea of Thieves, yes.
Like that comes out day one. Imagine how many sales, like all these people that were going to get it day one, they don't have to. They can just get the Game Pass now and just pay $10 for it, or how much it
maybe,
is.
but that's going to be a whole different subject altogether.
I think it's going to affect it though. Like people that were unsure about getting the game, now they try it out and they're like, "No, it's a good thing I had this. Now I don't have to get the game."
But that's
You know
also
what I mean?
10
That
bucks
kind of
that,
situation.
like Microsoft,
that they wouldn't
like,
get otherwise.
I was not going to buy Sea of Thieves. I think a lot of people were in that boat, right? Where it's like, because you're afraid of player base, you're afraid of like first and foremost, are my friends playing this, right? With that kind of game. Now
Yeah,
you
I
can
was.
guarantee, like, everyone can try out for $10. That's $10 from a lot of people that Microsoft wasn't getting. On top of that, I have a reason to subscribe to Xbox Live. That's another source of
$60.
income
Yeah.
that Microsoft is getting from me. Because now I have a reason to have Xbox Live. I want to play Sea of Thieves with my friends, you know?
Yeah, it's clear cut where it's like they've recognized that they're not going to get much more success than they have already with the Xbox One. So they're just going to shove this out there so that they can get whatever money they can while trying to future-proof their next console in regards to like player base and install base.
And I think also too, Moose can sort of speak to this because Moose owns a business, that like there's value to being able to look at a consistent, steady income, to like not have to
absolutely.
question, right? So like they can look and say like, we have 5 million subscribers a month. We have, however many they're going to have. And that number probably won't drop off or spike too much in any one specific time period. I mean, I'm sure like it'll pick up when Halo comes out, and it'll probably drop off a little bit when there's off months. But I think that for them, now you're willing to trade the potential gains you would have had to be a loss leader of having that consistent income that you can base your company around and your spending on, right? I think that's valuable to them as like a business side of things.
Like, I working at a jewelry store, for example, right? We always prefer when people get layaways because it's like they keep coming back, they keep spending money gradually, and then it gives them reason to keep coming back to us, keep spending with us, Whereas it's the same thing where it's like I'm subscribed to Xbox Game Pass. I'm gonna keep it. I'm probably not gonna cancel it, right? Because it's what, it's $10 a month, and it's gonna give me a reason. Oh, the new Crackdown came out. Well, I wasn't gonna play it before, but sure, let me play it now. And on top of that, I think what's the key thing. This is what I'm really interested in, is how it changes what Microsoft publishes, because I do think this kind of changes things where it's like, okay,
This will alter their design of their games in the future.
yeah,
for sure.
because now it's going to be like games as a service, right? They're going to want
Yeah.
you to spend money on the games that are included on Game Pass. Like
they want you
gonna
there for
want
more
me-
than a month, right? That's like clearly like they want you there for more than a month, so you will keep paying.
And they want me to pay not just that $10, right? But they also want me to pay for cosmetics in Sea of Thieves, for example. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what the
I
monetization
hope
model
that
of
is
that
not the case.
I don't think we'll see it for a little bit, but we'll see it down the line, right? Like, I don't think it'll hit Sea of Thieves. I think Sea of Thieves was already sort of done enough when this was put into action. But I think that, like, Halo 6 will be probably the coming out party in my mind for how they view this service.
So, like, like the pattern of like these types of services. Like, obviously, the first beginning parts of it is going to be great, but then they're going to be adding stuff that kind of like makes it shittier or makes it less appealing to consumers.
Sure, they have to over time just by the
Yeah.
nature of the beast, I think.
So, that's going to be natural. But my curiosity is like, are they going to start doing it at the next console? Like, are they going to continue this service towards the next console? And they're
they
gonna
create
change
that
again, or-
expectation, right? I think that if they go
Yeah.
away from it, it's sort of like if they... I think that it's hard because it's not even like a PS Plus type situation. Because if we like look at the PS Plus games from the PS3 generation to the PS4 generation, there was like a pretty noticeable drop off in like sort of what were the big gets. I don't know how you do that drop off with this, because you're saying it's every game. Like they make a point that our biggest games will be on here too, so you can't really scale that back without just getting a lot of potential anger. I feel like the only potential pathway is just increasing the price, but as we see with Netflix recently trying to increase the price, that also just gets people so mad. So, like, where do you go?
And it's just like, why would I want to spend $60 on Forza ever again when, like, I have this expectation, right, that I could get it for $10 for the month? It's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
It definitely changes the marketplace for sure, and it's going to be very, very interesting.
I just want to point out, Sega did it first.
They were brave. Sega, once again, willing to take the hits that no one else was willing to do.
The
willing
fucking
to be out there.
Sega channel.
Sega Channel,
Did it
baby.
first.
Download it. If you were a Sega Channel kid, you were in the lap of luxury.
Yeah,
You were
I wanted a
feeling
Sega
good.
channel so bad.
Good
I
lord.
was too poor for that.
Mm-hmm. You looked across the street and saw the Sega Channel on your friend's TV, and you said, "I wish that could be me."
Just staring through
I
your
think that
binoculars.
was the only way to play Mega Man: The Wily Wars.
Oh my
over here,
god,
so.
that meme with like the Wii U tablet in the rain just sitting alone, it's just Brandon's face.
Or it's just the Wii U gamepad with the Sega Channel logo.
It was a cool logo, man. It had some 90s vibes.
It was powerful stuff. But sort of to pivot, I think a narrative through line through all of the news this week is like, hey, the model for like how things are work in video games is changing.
Yeah.
Is that we had sort of two things that tie, I think, together because they both relate to everyone's favorite company from 2017, EA. We have a new interview from Amy Hennig, where she was asked about the killing of her Star Wars game that happened late last year. It was also made by Visceral. Visceral was shut down with a cancellation of that game. And she had thoughts on it in general, but her general overall sentiment was that there was a lot of overdramatic stuff about the death of that, of that whole game, that there was like these EA storming in and saying, we can't make single player games anymore. But she did say that there was validity to the issue of games are getting more and more expensive, right? That things are still $60, that the way that the companies want to make that up is through loot boxes, through monetization, but also that like single player games, she says, like, people want single player games, but they're not playing them, they're watching them, is like an exact quote she makes, that people are out there just watching a playthrough and saying, I got this story, I know what I needed, I'm out of here, and that affects their bottom line, that they notice it when it happens, and so
It's sad, man.
It's a sad thing.
So there's two parts to this. One is like the budgeting side, which we can get to later on, but the other part is like the idea of like streaming, and like the idea that this is something that affects this sort of game. Like piracy is like kind of like the idea that she's going for here.
Well, yeah,
But
piracy's always been around though, like since the
The
beginning.
thing is, like, sorry for interrupting, but the thing is, like, you guys haven't heard about this. You guys heard about this? Like the European Union the European Commission did a study on this, whether or not piracy affects games in 2015. And granted, it was based in Europe, so the economic factors would be different compared to America. But what they did find out was, like, they did a study for, like, music, fucking movies, and video games, and I think something else. And they did it in, like, countries like the UK, Spain, France, Germany, Poland, Sweden. And what they found out was, like, there's no link between piracy effect and as well as this effect on sales. And they found out as well on top of that, whereas like games that or people that stream or download games are more inclined to buy those games. Like those were actual results of that study. So that side of things, like that side of like, oh, people already have this story, so they don't bother playing those games or buying those games. I don't believe that to be true because data proves otherwise, especially in Europe, specifically in Europe.
I mean, I looking at this, like I was repeating what she was saying. I agree with you. I think about the whole streaming thing. I think streaming helps games. I think that there was there was a GDC conference. I forget the game that it was, but it was an indie game, and they were talking about sales, and they had a sales, and you can see it's like game launches and it goes up and it levels out for a while and it drops down, and then you see a giant spike, just a giant spike, and they're like, and this is where someone streamed our game, like it was like a well-known streamer streamed our game, and there was immediate spike in terms of sales. That was directly a result. There was no other factors that one led to it, right? Now, so removing that side of things, though, the $60 price point thing, and the whole like single player narrative, I think ties into the other EA story I wanted to talk about, which is Anthem. We remember Anthem came out at E3 last year, had their simulated dialogue. This is how you and your friends talk, right? Even though no one's ever spoken like that. But
yeah, I remember that shit now. I literally forgot about that until right fucking now.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Oh,
That's all BioWare is doing. That they said that all hands are on deck for Anthem. That's being pushed to 2019, and that there is concerns for the future of BioWare if Anthem fails, basically, which is like what was arguably one of the biggest coming out parties in the last console generation was BioWare, right? Mass Effect, Dragon Age were two of the biggest breakout successes for new franchises. And then last year we had Mass Effect Andromeda come out, fail, and then now they don't appear to be working on a new Dragon Age. They're working on this new IP that is primarily loot shooter based, clearly in the style of Destiny. Because they said that EA is coming in and saying that like you have to put some of these things in here to make the game be able to like be profitable long term. And there's just the question of like, can companies like BioWare or another huge one, just this literally happened like an hour before we started recording this podcast, Paragon, the Epic MOBA, is shutting down. Just gone. It's dead. It's just Fortnite now.
I actually never played the game, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never even heard of it, to be fair.
Sure. But that's the thing, right? Is that like we look and like a continual throughout this console generation is like Borderlands, huge breakout success. Gearbox, they say, okay, we're gonna get in on like the League scene, and they make Battleborn, and that game is a huge failure, right? Epic makes Gears of War, huge. Like, comes to this new console generation, says we're making Paragon and we're making this building game called Fortnite.
Yeah.
Paragon shuts down.
Fortnite's getting popular.
No, Fortnite is huge, right? But
Yeah.
Fortnite became huge because of the like battle royale mode, right? Like when it did fine but not great prior, and then now it's one of the biggest games on Twitch. And now like BioWare, huge last generation with single player story games. Now they're struggling to find their way. Like, is the changing of the model of design just making it where there's now this no man's land for those who found success prior?
I guess maybe not the most fair comparison, right? But like I think in 2017 specifically, you saw a lot of really successful single player games, mostly because they were just budgeted better, you know? Like
Yeah.
all the Switch games, right? Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey. Those two in particular, right? On PS4, you saw Nier Automata do really well, and you saw Persona 5 do great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird that like all these companies feel the need that the only way to make money is big budget, like high fidelity, open world kind of games, and a lot of them including multiplayer.
Just to add real quick, like the perfect example, like as well, is like Senua. That is like a B tier game, linear
Hellblade,
as
yeah.
fuck, and it's just really amazing, and it's been received well as well.
I mean, they literally at Ninja Theory they said like we're going for a like a double A tier, right, or like a triple A indie was the way they described their game. Like not huge but enough to interest people.
I think I know what they mean when they say that single player games don't make the money. It's because you can't nickel and dime people in a single player game because you're not going to have it. You're not going to have microtransactions in a single player game. There's just no way to put them in.
There's no good way to, right? And also
Exactly.
microtransactions rely on like a long period of time playing rather than like a finite single
I
player
mean, I think there
experience.
is merit to like it is harder to make money on these ginormous budget games, right? Like
Correct.
famously in 2013. Everyone was like, what the hell, Square Enix, when they said Tomb Raider sold 5 million units and it broke even, right?
Yes.
It's because with the single player adventures, everybody pays $60 and that's it. But they can, like I said, they can nickel and dime people with these multiplayer games. You pay $60, that's your entrance point. But they know that they're going to get these people that are going to spend more money as time goes on.
I think it's just down to managing their budget better, though, right? It's like...
Yeah, no, because, exactly. You're going to have to handle your budget. You can't just throw money at an idea and just throw money at packaging an idea. You need to actually develop it into something meaningful.
Well, I mean, look at Bubsy. They just threw money at that idea.
Because then you're going to be coming across the idea of, like, what you want. Would you rather pay more for a game, like $90 for a game or some shit like that? Or would you rather have microtransactions and a way to compensate for, like, these high budgets? Like, it really comes down to, like, actually focusing more on the idea and creating something meaningful out of it, rather than just like, oh, we need to have this, oh, people like this, we need to add this into the game, oh, we need to have this in the game because people respond more to this. Like, that's the main crux of it. That's the main problem with, like, this AAA market. They focus on more what people want than developing the ideas.
It's all about the Benjamin, Saf.
Which, I mean, it is. At the end, like, for these huge ones, where, like, these are games that will make or break. Like, if your one doesn't succeed, like, Mass Effect Andromeda comes out. It's not a great game. The studio's gone. The studio got swallowed up into another studio, and a lot of those people got let go. Like, that just happens. And so you have to understand that, like, well, if it's my job on the line, then sure, I'll stick in some rough stuff. But I think that all of this does lead into talking about sales and stuff to the next piece of news we got. It's a week old, but we got those December NPDs. And I think that these actually do give us a little bit of insight into all the previous stuff we've talked about, in fact. Because if we look at the top 10, the thing that's fun about the December NPDs is you get it for the year, right? You get the whole view of what was the highest grossing, right? Which means includes the microtransactions. And really fast, just running down that list, 1's Call of Duty World War II. It was never not going to be honest. 2's NBA 2K18. 3 is Destiny 2. 4 is Madden. 5 is Breath of the Wild. 6 is Grand Theft Auto. 7 is Ghost Recon Wildlands. 8, Battlefront 2. 9, Mario Odyssey. 10, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, actually, I should correct what I said earlier. They don't include microtransactions. That's the opposite of what I intended to say. But
they don't include digital sales either, right?
They don't include digital sales
except
either.
for Nintendo.
Except for Nintendo. Nintendo does not disclose them, so we don't know. So, like, Breath of the Wild might be higher than Madden. We don't know, but we can't tell because of digital. But if we look at those, like NBA, Destiny 2, Battlefront, like, those games are on this list, and they got nothing but negative headlines for their microtransactions, right? Like,
yeah, but they sell like a bitch, man.
But they sell. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, these companies, we can have as many angry things as we want. NBA still number 2, right? Like, that's the issue, is it, like, and I think that there's a thing that we don't get as much because of the way that we play games and that we are engaged in this news more. But, like, the NBA market is also the market that plays on phones, right? Like, the Battlefront 2 market's the market that also plays on phones, and they're, I think, way more acclimated to the idea of, like, paying for coins, right, in a video game, of being willing to drop $5 to, like, unlock a thing.
Yeah, also, what you need to bear in mind is that, like, we're talking about this from the perspective that we're gamers. This is something that's been hit through mainstream. Like, people play FIFA because it's, like, a mainstream appeal, because it's something like football, or like Madden, sorry, is more about football. So I don't believe that, aside from Star Wars, no one has ever heard of these bad fucking microtransaction practices.
Correct.
Like, I don't think the average person would even know about Call of Duty Modern Warfare being, like, packaged in the way it had been packaged when it was
Well, a quick aside on NBA specifically, it's weird because I really don't think it got reported on probably as much as it should have, because NBA 2K actually has some of the most predatory microtransaction stuff out there. But because it's like a casual quote-unquote game, I don't like that term, but whatever. You know, it more expanded audience.
More broad appeal.
NBA 2K. So sites like Kotaku don't really report on it, but yeah, NBA 2K
The end result, right? Like, yeah, like,
is some of the most, like, heinous microtransactions out there.
Yeah, Moose and I know a guy who's very into NBA every year, and he had to spend 7 hours grinding using a glitch to get more, like, of the currency in that game because he didn't want to spend money in microtransactions, right?
Wow,
like,
that's bad.
Yeah,
It's so dumb.
it's very bad.
The things in your life that you could be doing, like playing a good game.
NBA is his life, to be fair. He puts like 1,000 hours in it every year.
I mean, if that's your life, if that's your thing, then go ahead, man. You ain't hurting anybody.
But that's still really really bad. Like, there's something that's just fucking gone. What's that term? Fuck. It's something that's not gone noticed by anyone. No one's picked that shit up. And that's
Some
really
people.
Well, the
fucking
majority haven't picked it up.
Yeah.
One other thing is like the broader audience. Will kind of touched upon this, right? Is like that they're used to playing games on phones. They're used to like bullshit predatory practices, you know.
Oh, so they think it's normal.
They don't.
Yeah,
see
they are
it as-
acclimated to the idea. They're like, this is what you
Yeah.
do in a video game
Exactly.
sometimes.
Yeah, this is video games now.
Except
Like-
to me personally, it's like more annoying on a $60 game because there's already a barrier to entry. You know, you're already giving them $60. So on top of, I don't know, it's weird.
That almost reminds me of the this literally just earlier today. Saf posted he was looking at reading reviews for Mario Run on the damn App Store or whatever, and some guy goes, $10 for a game is an armed robbery.
It's an armed
Like,
robbery. $10
as-
is too much.
$10 for a game. Like, this guy was appalled of the fact that he had to spend $10 on a game, but he would be. I bet you. If it was free, he'd be more than willing to spend $10 on microtransactions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just sort of that expectation, I think.
Yeah.
Now that's now more common than we think it is, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, shout out to Nintendo with 3 games in the top 10.
And those 3 games with no microtransactions, might I
Yeah.
add.
They made it. And also no digital sales included there. So
Yeah, digital sales aren't even included is the crazy thing about
Yeah.
that.
that's the pretty wild thing.
Oh, for like Mario Kart 8 and Super Mario Odyssey in particular, those 2 games' digital ratio is pretty high, especially Mario Kart 8.
Yes.
So like,
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
imagine it's even higher than it
Just,
actually
we need to keep
seems.
Nintendo alive, boys. I tell you.
Also, shout out for fucking Breath of the Wild. Not only the best selling, one of the highest selling games of the year, best selling Zelda game as well. So good
Yes,
for that.
biggest in Japan since Ocarina of Time it did this week. So that's
Boom.
pretty exciting. And speaking of, I think sort of to like give us a perspective of like how the companies view their own releases. Let me give you a little guessing game. You ready? So I'm looking
love
at the
games.
top 10. If you were looking, please stop.
Wow, that's already failed from the get go.
If you are for the Xbox One top 10, how many Xbox and PC exclusives are on the top 10 for Xbox One?
2.
I was gonna say 2.
Two for both of you.
I'm abstaining because I know the answer.
I'm surprised that there are 2. There is no way that there's going to be 2. One?
Sav thinks one.
One?
There is one. It is
Damn it.
Forza Motorsport 7, and it's
I knew
number
it was
10.
gonna be Forza. I knew Forza was gonna be one of them.
Yes. Okay. So then moving on. So I think that like gives us like a little bit of a perspective of where Microsoft views their first party releases. Like they're already not in the top 10 for their system for the year, right? Like they had a game with Halo in the name come out. Halo Wars 2 came out last year. No one noticed. So I think that in like on some level they're fine with it. Like this is worth more than their first party sales are
Yeah,
worth.
but Halo Wars is kind of like a spin-off, kind
It
of.
is.
Well, sure,
but, like-
but that's why I think like it's a win-win. Sorry to go back to the Game Pass conversation, but that's why I think it's a win-win for Microsoft, right? Because their first-party lineup gets bolstered because now they're more important, more people are playing them, and it makes Xbox more attractive. I really think it's like the best of both worlds for them. But yeah,
Correct. And like for so like for PlayStation 4, just really quickly, it's 2 games, which is Horizon and MLB. And you want to take a guess for Switch?
All of them?
I'm
Is that
gonna,
all of them?
yeah, I'm gonna go with all 10.
Actually, wait.
All 10.
I'm gonna say 8.
8. The answer is 9.
Damn
It's
it!
number 10, Zelda Scrolls 5 Skyrim sneaks in.
Oh,
But
fuck off.
besides that, it is Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart, Splatoon, Mario and Rabbids, ARMS, Pokken, Switch, 1-2 Switch, and then Xenoblade Chronicles 2. which, by the way, good for that. And Nintendo 3DS, every single one of the top 10 is a Nintendo published game. So they're doing fine, baby. They're not worried. Nintendo is they just this in December they won the month. They had the most hardware sold, and they are now the fastest and highest selling console in a 10-month period in the history of the United States.
That makes my penis
Faster
become a
than the
big penis.
PS4, faster than the Wii.
Faster than the PS2.
God.
It is going good.
It's going well. So,
Literally.
I mean, I'm happy to see Nintendo
I'm
doing
very
well.
happy.
Oh God, I'm so hard right now.
Same.
Stop. This is PG-13.
But this also ties into, I guess, they're like, we have so much money now, we can cut some costs. Mitomo is dying. Mitomo is about to leave. Which I think lets us take a moment to look at the successes and failures of the Nintendo Mobile Initiative, right? That we look and we see sort of 3 different attempts that really have defined like what are successes for them in the mobile space.
Yeah.
Styles almost.
You have Mitomo, which is the clear social media play. You have Mario Run, which is the clear like traditional gameplay, right? We're going to ask you for $10, which is highway robbery.
Armed robbery.
Armed robbery. I'm sorry. I realized when I said I got it
somebody's holding
wrong.
a gun to your head, telling
Someone's
you to buy
holding
this
a gun to my head. And then we have Fire Emblem Heroes, which is more of a mobile like gotcha system. And spoilers, I mean, this is the one time Nintendo was not able to reinvent the wheel. The gotcha game did the best, and on a series that is not as big as Mario, right? But you say it's gotta, but it's gotta. It's gotcha. Like
Gotcha.
It's gotcha. It's so like, and then we see Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, which in many ways is going down the Fire Emblem path more so than the Mitomo or the
Well,
Mario Run
Fire
path.
Emblem works a little
Fucking
bit different,
shitty
where
things
it's
are-
like instead of because Fire Emblem makes its money how most Japanese games make it, where it's a it's a
sure the
thing,
random
right?
pull, yeah.
Whereas Animal Crossing is more equivalent to virtual currency, I guess you could say. You're getting specific things in Animal Crossing
right.
for
He's right.
the microtransactions, and actually we've seen that's actually less successful than Fire Emblem.
Yeah,
interestingly
no,
enough.
they've actually recently tried to go for a more randomized route when it comes to their like game. Like whenever they're doing their own mechanics, like they're trying to make it more dependent upon like you getting as much currency as you can, because the systems in place to just focus more on RNG than anything else. So they're trying to copy Fire Emblem and try to be more like Fire Emblem in that respect, because that's the most successful one that they've got. Because Mario clearly didn't work out.
Quick
Mitomo, I don't
tidbit
know.
about Fire Emblem. It's made more revenue than the 3DS games combined of that franchise. So,
Well, no thanks to you.
No thanks to you. No.
we don't want to talk
I
about
blame you. I blame specifically you. You asshole. You
I mean,
literally
you spent more
funded.
on that game than you've spent on the entire franchise.
You've
of Fire
literally
Emblem.
funded
Don't
the
even
next
tell
two
me.
Fire
I think
Emblem
it would be
games with-
physically impossible for Moose to have spent more money on the franchise than Fire Emblem Heroes. I think if he bought every single game, including their like weird, like new, like paying for the weird Japanese only games, he could still not do it.
Well, yeah. What can you do? It's a good game.
bad.
Deserved every dollar.
So there we go. I mean, that's the story, right? Is that just like
Is Bunny
sometimes
Lucina worth it?
Yeah, amen.
I mean, I gotta say yes.
I'm gonna.
say
It's
yes.
a definitive yes. The Jump Up Supercast of seal of approval is on Bunny Lucina.
Just
And
to
all
clarify,
and
it's
all
just the
Lucinos.
it's just the more lonely part of Jump Up Supercast.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. We're all right. Speaking of loneliness, if you want to remember the good times, the bad times, and the soft, creamy middle times of Mitomo, we have an Instagram that Brandon will now plug, where you will see some of the great creations that were made in the 27 days that people played that game.
Yes, the very fun but also confusing 27 days, because I remember playing this game and being like, I don't get the point, and I still really don't. It was a weird.
We can now say that there wasn't really a point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We can
No,
now
It's
look
a
at it
fun
and
little
say,
social media kind of thing going
Yeah.
on.
I made a new friend through Mitomo, and I still don't understand the point of
And,
Mitomo.
and Saf made a friend, his only friend.
I made one
on
friend
Mitomo.
through Mitomo.
can't
I was
believe
so
it.
happy,
One's on
and
the
then
board.
I abandoned it completely.
So you should check out the Instagram. Jump Up Supercast on at Instagram, and I'm gonna post some of the pictures that I made because they had that cool thing where you take your Mii's and you put them into pictures on your phone.
Me
Kinda
photo.
Insert them. Me photo. Yeah, that's what it was.
Me
called.
photo. See, that was.
Yep.
I think they
It
made that
was
game
fun.
just for me puns, to be honest.
That was the most fun I had in that, and I'm gonna post some of my pictures there.
I think that was the most fun that everyone had in that, to be honest.
Yeah.
For sure,
There's
yeah.
some nice.
That's what I saw
Lucina
the most
pictures.
shares of. And now, just sort of to wrap off the news, I'm going to hit a couple of just sad news. Like, I just saw it and went, oh, man. David Jaffe's company is not doing well. You may remember they made Drawn to Death, a game that did not look good, that went from being a $60 game to being a $20 game to then being free on PlayStation Plus. So that's another one of just those guys that just is not translated well to this new generation. And they're making a new Fable game, which is hey, Fable 4.
Yay!
Yo, what? Hey. And then they're like, we started to make it because of the success of Horizon Zero Dawn. And you're like, oh, you don't get it at all. You don't get it at all.
Nope.
The last Fable game failed, Fable Legends, you might remember. It was just sort of like an Evolve style thing. They said Evolve looks like it's going to be big before it even came out. So we're going to do a 4v1 multiplayer thing too. And that got canceled because apparently it was 99% done. It was basically finished. It was playable at multiple events, just got canceled. And they're like, okay, so what's the moral from that? We're just going to like make another imitation game. So that's, upsetting.
To be fair, I think hopefully like the creative vision behind it is more than just we want to make another Horizon. Like the development team itself might be a little more. And
Sure.
I think it's worth mentioning
of
who
note-
is developing it.
Yes, the
Yeah.
Forza Horizon people are making this game,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Lionhead's gone, so they're not able to make it. Lionhead employees spoke, and they said they're upset they don't get to be the ones to make it, but they're happy for the people that are. But yeah, like, what a weird, even more so than, like, Guerrilla going from Killzone to Horizon, this is just going to be nuts that we're going from, you basically made exclusively racing games to this.
And the Horizon games are apparently pretty good, right?
The Horizon games are my favorite of the Forza games.
Yeah.
They are
Yes,
open
I
world.
agree.
And
I
they're open. And
definitely
since they
agree.
are open world, I wonder if that kind of points to Fable 4 maybe being open world.
I would imagine
Right?
that's
You
that's
kinda-
the thing that they would bring to the table out of all
Yeah.
the things that they
Fable
have.
was always kind of open world.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
But I'm always happy to see developers kind of branch out from what they're usually doing. Like, the Animal Crossing team ended up making Splatoon, right? That turned
Sure.
out amazing. And Guerrilla Games, right? Going from
Yeah.
making samey Killzone games to
Horizon
Zero Dawn, which ended up
was
being great. Right?
Horizon was the only new IP on the PlayStation 4 top 10 last year.
Yeah.
So celebrate it, right? It worked. It worked. They put a lot of thrust behind it, but it worked at the end of the day. So good for them.
Yeah.
But that, I think, rounds up the big stuff. Any last thoughts on anything that's happened this week, my boys?
Not particularly. Single player games, just budget your games better.
Be smart.
so
Make more Nier Automatas. Make less Tomb Raider reboots.
if this were a video, we would send an homage to Mitomo, and we would play Sarah McLaughlin's.
I Will Remember You.
Actually, one last thing. Actually, on the single player thing, we didn't even mention Horizon sold actually amazingly, and that's a huge budget game. So I think
Yes.
that is worth noting.
So
Without
there's
any
there are clear,
microtransactions.
yeah.
Did we not? I thought we did.
Uh,
Well, it
I-
did.
yeah. So.
Either way, it's good to reiterate because it's good to remind ourselves that there are successful single player games.
And that's a big budget game. So
So now, let's get a little personal. Let's get close to the microphone and just ask ourselves, what you been playing, boys? We have.
I am turned
I
off
see.
for some reason.
I see some good games that you have played, and I'm curious. I'm gonna lead off with Moose with the most recent release, Celeste. Tell me about it on the Nintendo Switch, my dude.
Oh my goodness! I only started it yesterday, but all I want to do is talk about Celeste. So this game came out to every platform, but I'm playing it on Switch because Switch is the best place to play games. No, but
The most powerful gaming console.
Yeah. In all seriousness, now Celeste is like a platforming game, precision platformer, kind of in the vein of Super Meat Boy.
Mhm.
So if you like Super Meat Boy, I'm sure you'll love this. But
It is a challenging platforming game.
yeah, very challenging.
Okay.
It's kind of room by room, except it's not level based like Super Meat Boy. It's divided into chapters, which are kind of continuous, but the screens scroll one by one, kind of like Legend of Zelda on the NES, right? It's super crazy what they do with it though, because it's not just the precision platforming; it's what they bring to it. It has these crazy Mario Galaxy-esque gimmicks that saying gimmicks is a disservice, because the way they use this, they introduce an idea and it gets used throughout the chapter and sometimes even to the next chapter. And I'm curious and I wouldn't be surprised if I'm seeing the weird one-off thing in chapter 2 return later on. You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty early still. I just got to chapter 4.
I mean,
yeah,
I would say that like a thing that I think Nintendo does really good, really well, I guess, would be they put a lot of concepts on top of each other, but you never feel overloaded by them.
Oh yeah,
right. And do you think that Celeste sort of has that trait in it?
I think Celeste passed that with flying colors. Like it feels like, in terms of gameplay, it feels like that kind of Nintendo design philosophy. Especially when like I said, especially with Super Mario Galaxy. And what is interesting, it actually has a story.
Yes. This seems to be the most surprising thing to me, is that you said it goes places.
It goes places. It's weird. It's not heavy-handed, right? But like every now and then they'll interrupt the game with like 2 quick lines of dialogue or whatever. And there's really interesting characters actually, and the main character herself is really cool. It definitely the part that caught me most off guard is I was not expecting the game to have a story, especially one as weird as this. The story is weird, the levels themselves are very weird, but just in the best way.
Yes, I mean, one of my favorite things about an indie game is when you tell it the story that like one person had in their brain. Right, like this is one guy's really crazy idea that he wants to get out there, or one girl's crazy idea, and I feel like just here, I was in the call with you when you were playing, and it was just a lot of like, what, how, like what's happening, like what is this? And I think that's when a game elicits that's always a fun thing.
Oh, it's super great. And then just one last thing of note, the soundtrack is fantastic.
I heard a little bit of it in the call the other day. And you were like, "Oh, is it too loud?" I was like, "No, keep it going.
Keep it loud. We want to hear it." That's
Turn it up.
Sign.
Turn it up.
It's super. Yeah. So if you like 2D platformers that just feel great to play, you like a good challenge, you like a weird story, you like a good soundtrack, buy Celeste. It's great. I cannot recommend it more.
Nice. I'm gonna throw Saf. I mean, I think all of us have sort of touched on this game, but I want to get your thoughts because you, I think, have the most completed of all of us. SteamWorld Dig 2. Another good side scroller on the Switch.
Yeah, SteamWorld Dig 2 is basically the sequel to SteamWorld Dig 1, obviously. But what it is like it takes what was like a very simple concept that was introduced by SteamWorld Dig and expands upon it in multiple different ways. Like they have much more of a story. It actually goes to certain places and it connects to other games really well. It's I don't think it's as procedurally generated as it was before in the first game, whereas like you have 3 different areas that you go to and you have options of what you want to tackle first, and you have a lot more freedom to explore than you did with the first game. Also, the music is much more atmospheric. It feels better. It sounds cool.
The music caught me off guard. I was in the Oasis, which is like the town that you're in.
Yeah.
And I just like had it on the TV while I was like typing out something on my computer, and I noticed, without even meaning to, I was like bobbing my head a little bit. I was like,
yeah, it's got a nice hip hop flow to it.
This is a pretty chilled out group. I was like, this is pretty all right, and that made me happy.
That, like,
I
lo-fi
particularly
hip-hop?
like the character design.
Yeah,
so.
kinda. Like if you go to the temple of the temple of some temple, but there's a temple area where you go down there. It's like some shit that you expect on lo-fi radio.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And Moose mentioned, I think briefly, the character design. Like, I did not particularly care for. I mean, like, I liked Rusty in the first game, but I like all the character design in this game a whole lot. I feel like there's you can look at a character and sort of get like their whole deal, which is fun.
Yeah. Because you mentioned the town, and I was like, yeah, like specifically in that town, I love just the first town. The character designs in there are just like super great. Like the guy you sell your stuff to, right? He looks like this big greedy guy. Like you can tell just by looking at him. And,
he's the shopkeeper. You got it.
Yeah. So
a thing that I really loved about SteamWorld Dig 2 is that like with it, it's because it's half. I would say that like the first SteamWorld Dig was like 70% digging game, 30% Metroidvania game.
Yeah.
This one is much more split. It's much more, I would say, 50-50 between the two. But in Digger games, sort of by the nature of, like, you're digging down and like, part of the trial of it is, like, hey, you might dig in a way that, like, screws yourself up later on. They sort of have to, like, limit your traversal options. And SteamWorld Dig 2 says, like, screw it. Like, nah, man. Like, there's multiple times in that game you get items where you're like, oh, this completely changes not only how, like, the Metroidvania elements of, like, going back to old areas and making them easier to explore, but the way the tunnels I dug, I can now, like, address in a completely different way.
Totally, yeah.
Which is super fun. Like, just going from, like, relatively early on, you get, like, a grappling hook, right? And just, like, that completely changes the way that you approach getting all of the resources.
Yeah, there's a lot of those types of elements. Like they've done a fantastic job of like making a sequel, adding a lot more content to it, and yet making it feel far more different than its predecessor, and makes them far more unique. Like the best way I can describe it is that this sequel is the exact opposite to the sequel to Darksiders. Like, cause like Darksiders 2 is just full of, they just want to add shit and it feels so bloated and it just feels kind of sluggish.
It never comes together.
But this one, they've done the exact opposite. They've added a lot more content, they've added a lot more features to it, different mechanics, and it feels like a really strong, good sequel. Feels like a really good game.
And I mean, it's good that it is, because they said this is the last SteamWorld Dig game. That there will be SteamWorld games, but that they've sort of expended all of their ideas on the dig side of things, which I mean, you can tell it feels like a game where they left it all out there, right? They didn't hold anything back, which is fun.
I have not beaten the challenge area yet. Like there's 100% do the challenge area, but that fucking challenge area is hard as shit. Like they really put you through the ringer, and I think there's supposed to be like a special secret as a result of it, which I really need to get. But
that is very cool.
Yeah, they're very gracious to its players, so I'm happy with that.
We are full up on good sky scrollers on Switch right now, which is exciting. When Hollow Knight comes out, we're going to be even more doomed. Noah played a thing that I want to hear about, because I hear you can punch some people in a swamp. The Resident Evil 7 End of Zoe DLC.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It is the best thing. Well, definitely the best DLC on Resident Evil 7 for sure. The End of Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Baker is easily my favorite character in the series now.
I'm so jealous. I want to play that.
Sorry, Leon, but you got competition right now.
I've seen a lot of it. Yeah,
really badass. I mean, you literally go up to like these terrifying creatures in Resident Evil 7. I mean, it doesn't really have that much variety in terms of monsters, but you're standing at this 7-foot creature with giant teeth and just all his worm-like features and terrifying. Is like about to eat you, and you just punch him right in the face, and knock them over,
so
and then
good.
Stomp them on with your foot on their
you
face.
do punch
and just...
combos with that shit.
Oh yeah,
right?
you can do punch combos, you can do jabs, you can do an uppercut that knocks him down.
There's
that's
a
his main
god hand combat system. That's
Oh, yeah.
so good.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so satisfying, and
I love that because it's so different than Resident Evil 7, right? Like it is.
yeah, like most of the time in Resident Evil 7, you're like hiding from everybody. You don't want to get discovered. You're trying to be sneaky. I mean, there are stealth kills that you can do, which is another awesome thing. You just sneak up behind them and rip off their head. But it's just it feels so good. It just
I feel like
so
that's been
good.
a thing in Resident Evil the last couple, games, where the main game is this way, right? One set way, but then,
Sure.
with the DLC, especially
They
with Resident Evil
deviate.
With Resident Evil 5, I think it was.
Yeah, when you go back to the mansion.
Yeah, it just really switched up the gameplay. It was almost like classic Resident Evil.
Yeah, and I like that this is like, because I think that putting out as like the final, I mean, I think this is the final DLC big one of Resident Evil 7. They said, and I think that ending it on such a different tact than the main game, I think actually makes you appreciate the main game more in some ways, right? Because you can see like the full depth of this game as an experience, right? Like there's so much in this world that you want to be able to do. Like the world can both allow for spooky main game and also like still creepy but like much more goofy, like, you know, running around as Joe punching dudes, and I think that's fun.
That's both. It's literally both spectrums of the Resident Evil universe that
It really is.
some people love and some people hate, but I love it all.
Yeah, this is the logical endpoint of Leon suplexing people in Resident Evil 4.
Oh
Like,
no, no! With Joe Batista bombs the monsters.
that is the best.
You can't beat that.
It's like they turn it up to 11, and it's very good. So Brandon,
Yes.
you are still midway through Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Yes.
How you feeling?
It's a fucking drag. I mean, the game is good. It's just it's so hard for me because I'm a very busy man.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also I overload my plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love to play everything. So I keep with JRPGs, man. It's so hard for me to commit to because they're so very, very long, and it takes me way longer than everybody else. Because you guys have all beat this game. You guys commit
have
to it.
Well,
and that's all
Saf is
you
technically
do.
hasn't, but Sav is at 300 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's an
I'm
insane
at, like,
man.
I think I'm at like 65 right now, and I'm just over halfway through the game.
So
But-
this is a thing I wanted to touch on about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 without getting spoilers, of course, because Brandon's still in the midst of things, and also people listening might not have beaten the game. But the biggest surprise I had out of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was the cast. I walked in worried, right? And I don't know if anyone else had that, but just like the designs and the general conversation around the game, there was just sort of this thing of like, will this just be like, will the blades just be a way to justify having all these like this harem of girls around the main character, right? Will it just
Yeah.
be a way to justify all these things? I love that like that game centralizes on a theme. Like that game is about blades and drivers and what that means and like what
Yeah.
each of their roles are. And I think that that's a cool, neat thing that like stays a continual through line throughout that I didn't expect, but I kind of hate myself for not having enough faith, right? Like in Monolith and in that series of games, because they haven't led us astray yet, right? It may not be Xenoblade 1 for some people, but I think that game is still pretty good.
It is very good. They do a really good job of building character and making you care about the blades individually.
Mhm.
You know,
Like, have
as
you tried
unlock
any of
them,
this? Sorry.
and you get to do their side quests, and you get to see their heart-to-heart conversations, and all of them have a backstory. All of them have characteristics. You actually, you know, they did a really good job fleshing them all out and making you actually, you know, you can care about each one of them.
Yeah, they have a lot of cool. Yeah, the side quests for these blades are actually one of the things that I really enjoy about it, because they actually put in a lot of time and effort into it. Like they put in a lot of money in production.
Yeah, there's a genuine beginning, middle, and end to a side quest, which you don't get with a lot of JRPGs especially. And I think that's really a thing that I appreciate, because it helps you further the reason you care for these characters later on.
Yeah, and a lot of the side quests, even the NPC ones, you know, decent amount of them are more than just, hey, Fred, I need this, please get it, and that, thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they're all fleshed out, you know, this person has a legitimate gripe or problem, and, you know, a lot of them are multiple steps where, you know, oh, well, my son's lost. You find the son, and the son's like, well, my dad beats me, and then you're like, oh, well, now what? You know, like, that didn't really happen, but, you know, it's something like that, where...
I mean, the game gets weird and dark in some parts, too. Like, that
Yeah.
could
Oh, it
easily
gets
happen.
really dark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still not on the same level as the first Xenoblade game. The first Xenoblade game had like depths, like they had like consequences to choices as well. Which
true.
this game doesn't actually spend too much time on.
Yeah, there is some cool choices that you get to make. Like, what was it? The one where the couple gets married, right?
Yeah.
And then you can tell them whether or not their dad was like, nah, fuck him, like, right? He was like, I don't want anything to do with them, no. And then it's like, wow, that's kind of fucked up, right? He didn't even come around. And then you go tell him, and you're like, oh, did you tell my parents? Yeah. And then he gives you the choice. Tell them that their dad hates them, or lie to them and say, "Nah, it's cool." Like, that's really a cool thing that it gives you options like that.
You guys are really making me regret mainlining the story. After
Yeah, there's
chapter
cool
3.
stuff.
There's a lot of cool
good.
stuff in there.
Because I just blast. At a certain point, I was just like, I'm interested in the main story. I just want to blast through. I didn't really do side quests. Like Brandon, I beat it at the 70-hour mark, and Brandon's like almost there, and at that 70-hour mark, and yet he's not even close to the end. So
And like a thing I loved about a thing that Xenoblade Chronicles 1 did this too. That like the side quests, like, because you know how like it'll happen in RPGs where like you'll pass a certain story beat and a side quest will unlock, and there's no real reason why it like happens now versus like before. With 2, it's like there are side quests that are a direct causation of things that you did in the main story, right? Like events happen, characters are in a different place than they were before because of the main thing, and some of the side quests are like helping bring stability where you caused upheaval, right? And like that is a thing that I think is very cool and neat. It makes it feel more well realized, not only in the world design of these very cool giant titans, but on the people that inhabit them.
Yeah, you've reminded me of the example. Whereas, like, this is a bit of a spoiler, but in a cutscene you destroy a water tower. And there is a side quest where it's like you
That's
need
not
to
that much of a spoiler.
fix. I'm trying to do it. But there's a side quest that deals with that sort of thing. It's like, well, you destroyed the water tower. Look at all these fucking people that are suffering because of it. Now, what the fuck are you going to do about it?
I'm glad you picked a very early on spoiler.
yeah, that's an early.
Yeah.
That was
good
that
choice.
was a good call,
You're
Saphir.
welcome. Yes. That's 300 hours for you.
I'm shocked you remember anything at this point when you put that much time in.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't even know this was a thing, Brandon, but you noticed the Nonary games, which for those who don't know are like the 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, that series of games, there's a collection of it on PS4.
I don't let weird games like that I love so much get past me. And it was such an under like the radar release, right? Like they re-released there's the Nonary games, which comes with 999 and Virtue's Last Reward.
Yeah, 999 Virtue's
redone.
Last Reward and...
Well, no, because the Nonary games, that package comes with those two. And then they
Yes.
also re-released Zero Time Dilemma on its own for the PS4. And I already own all of them. Like, mind you, I own all of them on the DS and the 3DS. So I have the entire series. But I said, I want to play through this again. And I was like, you know what? I want to play through them in HD. And why not, right? They're pretty cheap. It was probably like $50 for like the whole series all over again.
Not too bad.
Yeah, that's
And
pretty good. Like,
it's pretty cheap, and they also added voice acting to like the first one, which
that's very cool,
had
actually.
only had a little bit, but like almost the entire game has voice acting now, which is great.
That's really quickly a thing that I did not realize how much I liked, like fully voice acted video games, until I played Fire Emblem Echoes last
Fire
year.
Emblem Echoes. Yes, I had the
we
same
agree.
exact thought.
Like, man, I didn't realize how much I like a Fire Emblem character more when all of their dialogue is voiced and it's good voice acting.
Yeah.
And so adding that in actually makes me like want to replay that because like 999 was one of the first visual novels I played.
It's so good.
I feel as though I'm on the different other end of the spectrum with you in terms of like 999 and Virtuous Last Reward, because I hated the voice acting in Virtuous Last Reward. I did not like it.
Sure.
No, I mean, I liked it.
Mm.
And well, I think Phoenix Wright was the first visual novel.
Yeah, I
I've
guess
ever
you're right. That is a
Yeah.
visual novel. I don't think of it in that way, but you're totally right. It is. So
Yeah.
that actually is my first. But like,
The Phoenix Wright was the first. It was the game that got me into visual novels. And
yeah, I think it's goofy enough that it's a good entry point, right? Where like 999 is pretty serious. It was like the first like pretty serious visual novel that I
Yeah.
played. And then Danganronpa is like the weird midpoint between those two. So
yeah, it's right in the middle. It's
Yeah.
it's serious but also goofy.
so that is exciting. Now I want
Yeah.
to replay 999. Thank you.
It's such a good series. It's literally and I realized it the other day when I was just like playing through them again. I was like, this is Escape Room the video game, and this is now escape rooms have blown up. people absolutely love escape rooms now, and for good
Totally.
reason. They're so fun.
Yeah, they're really
They're
good.
popping up all over the place around me. Like, they're putting them all over. Like towns are, hey, we got an escape room now. Like, they're really, really fun to do.
There's there's like 3 or 4 in my city. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, they're a blast to do with friends.
They were ahead of the curve. Before it blew up, they had it.
It literally
They had
is
the idea.
just escape room the game. And I told my sister about it. I was like, you need to play these. I know you'll love them. The
Mhm.
more people that play that series, the better. Although it's over now, but still.
It's fine. It's good to get people into that type of game as well, with good examples, because there's a lot of garbage in
There's
visual
a
novels.
lot of bad visual novels. That's for
There's-
sure.
There's a whole swamp of them. Really quick, let's touch on to the big releases of the week. Some people might be like, why are they talking about Monster Hunter and Dragon Ball? And the answer is, we're recording this on Friday. Those games just came out. But we're going to hit on them more next week. But early impressions, I think, for both are very positive.
Oh yeah.
I haven't even got to play them. I got home and I had to record this fucking podcast.
What do you mean? Oh yeah, weren't you just spending time watching videos on?
No. I played a little bit last night. I played with Will. Just
He
a
did.
tiny
Okay, thank
bit.
God.
I played the first intro. I played actually a little bit of Dragon Ball 2. Really, honestly, the only thing I can really say about both, they're both freaking gorgeous.
They're
you
very
know?
pretty games.
They're-
We had a week where there is 3 different games that are above an 85 on Metacritic. That's pretty nuts.
That's crazy.
We have, because it's Dragon Ball, Monster Hunter, and Celeste are
Do
the
not sleep on Celeste.
don't sleep on Celeste.
It's $20 though.
I don't think it will beat March, where they had like near.
Well, yeah, but
Breath of the
still,
Wild.
it's fun to point out that this week it was a pretty good week for
In a,
video
in a,
games.
a 3-day span, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
It's too much. Frankly, space it out, guys. But that sums up, I think, the games we've been playing. Now to move on to the part that, frankly, is the reason we all show up: the list. Moose, do you want to explain the format of the list to our dear viewers?
I would love to. So the list, what it is, we are basically compiling a list of video games, ranking them in order, right? So the end goal is to rank every single game that came out. I'm just kidding. So every week we're going to introduce a new game to the list, and we're going to decide where to rank it amongst what we currently have. So what we're starting out with is a list I think we can all kind of agree on, right? Is at number 1 at the moment is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. After that is Super Mario 3D Land, which is kind of pretty good. Crash Bandicoot is our average game, our barometer for an average game.
Well, yeah, pretty good, right? Like it's
pretty good,
it's
yeah,
a game.
sure, yeah. It's in the middle, basically. Though.
Yes.
Number 4 is Metroid Other M, kind of on the lower end of the scale, and at the absolute bottom is Sonic the Hedgehog in 2006. So that is kind of the list right now. So yeah, every week we're
using it as a
game,
barometer of sorts, right? To sort of like gauge where we think the other game should go.
and we're not gonna mention everything that's on the list, of course, every week because it's going to get ridiculous. There's gonna be a Google Doc link in the
Or Pasteman.
or there'll be some sort of link to see the entire list.
You will
in
be
the
able to see
description.
the list written
And
out every week.
Don't
Yeah.
worry, guys. Brandon has got you on the social media platforms. You follow us on Facebook. You follow us on Instagram. You follow us on Twitter. I got you. There will be links to the list. You can keep track
So
and follow.
you'll be good on that front, okay? So best way to explain the list is really to go at it, right?
See it
The
in action.
demonstration. See it in action. So I'm going to add the very first game to the list, Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight.
Oh, starting strong.
Yeah.
Good game, man.
So
Are we just saying Shovel Knight base game or with the DLC?
I'm gonna say Shovel Knight Treasure Trove because it is one game you could buy for $25.
That is true.
That has the base game. It has
Plague of Shadows
It's
and
gonna have
Spectre
more,
of Torment.
though.
Spectre of
Dude,
Torment.
it's not even
It's
done.
gonna have another free expansion coming sometime in the next few months. King Cards, and it's getting a battle mode. It's insane. So I guess we'll start out with that, right? The amount of content available in Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is just insane.
Where the hell are my amiibos?
Yeah, where the hell? Yeah. So
Aaron Hansen, hook us up.
Because you could say, oh, like whatever, you're playing the same game but with different characters, but it's really so much more than that, right?
It's way more than that.
Like Plague of Shadows is first of all, the characters play completely differently, right?
Yes.
And they fine-tune the levels to take advantage of those characters' abilities.
And the story's different. Like that's
the
the
story,
thing I love.
yeah.
It's just like, oh,
they added
man.
new characters. They fleshed out characters that you just saw for a second. You know, I don't want to go too into detail because it's worth checking out on your own, right? But like you see a character in Shovel Knight that appears for not very long in Plague of Shadows, completely fleshed out. You're like, oh, that makes sense that she would interact with Plague Knight. You know.
Yes.
And Spectre of Torment is actually a prequel to Shovel Knight, and I thought that was super cool touch. You know, like you kind of see how the Order of No Quarter came together, whatever.
Two things I love about Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
One, it like gave me hope for Kickstarter games, right? Like it was pretty early on in the well-known period of Kickstarter, and it got funded. It showed very well. It had a good demonstration, and it has not only met expectations, it has exceeded all of them, right? The amount of content you're getting from those expansions because of the Kickstarter bonuses. I think that, like, in the age where Mighty Number 9 was, like, sort of the same generation, I think that we can see just the two sides of that Kickstarter coin, but I think that we need the Shovel Knights out there to prove that, like, you can make a game through this platform.
Yeah.
And the other thing I love is that, like, games of Shovel Knight's ilk, of sort of like the throwback to like 16-bit platformers and 8-bit platformers, they're a lot of times they're like very like jokey and like, what am I gonna get? A game over? Like, looks like I'm gonna like, just a lot of like winking bad humor, right? That's not funny. Shovel Knight takes its character seriously. Like, it takes its story seriously. Like, Shovel Knight is inherently a goofy idea. It's a knight with a shovel. Yeah. But like, to him, the stuff that he's went through, that's important. That's important to that guy, right? Like,
that's true.
And so I think that stuff makes those expansions also interesting, right? Because you built a world that is unique and has its own flavor that isn't played for comedy. It's played as a story.
That's the good thing about Shovel Knight is it's a retro throwback to way back in the day, right? But it's a retro throwback that takes itself as if it was one of those games to try to fit in with them, like to try to put its name next to Mega Man, right? And not be an homage to it. It's an homage to it without being obvious. Like, hey guys, we're making a pixelated game, and it's gonna be indie game, and we're gonna make a lot of throwbacks to like all these old games that you're gonna like be like, I know that game. This makes me want to buy it. But like, this is like, hey, we're gonna make a game in this style, but like, it's hard to say. You know what I mean?
The takeaway from them was not the aesthetic or like whatever from Mega Man. It was that Mega Man's a good platformer. Let's make a good platformer. Right?
Yeah, that's literally the mission statement. We want to make a game, an NES. Basically, we're making an NES game that is a really good video game. That's it.
Exactly.
Like,
they're making
kind
an
of breaks
NES
the
game.
boundaries of the NES, this game totally fits alongside the classics. Stand out on its own. Where I think if it came out in 1980, it would have been revered as a classic. You know, it's super good.
Yeah, I could see that.
They set out to make a game that people would think was a classic back then.
It was a homage, really. Yeah.
And shout out to the soundtrack, which is just ace.
Jake Kaufman
Fucking
is
so
good man.
Oh yeah.
He's in the game.
I guess I will tell you where I would like to rank it.
Okay.
I want to actually put it right now at number 2, above Super Mario 3D Land. And it's a little tough for me. I know some people in here are big 3D Land detractors.
I agree.
Super Mario 3D Land, though, is a really good platformer. Just fantastic all around. But I do think Shovel Knight edges it out in terms of, like...
I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to put it above 3D Land. So, any objections?
I mean, I would have vehemently disagreed if you're talking about just the base game. But if you're talking about Treasure Trove, that changes things quite significantly.
I pretty much agree with everything. If anything, I'd put it above Ocarina of Time, honestly.
Whoa! Whoa!
Oh, okay.
Because of all the milestones it just hit, it's just incredible for this day and age for a game like that to be that good and that universally loved by everybody.
Oh,
Yeah, I
man.
cannot
And
in good
also
faith
trying
put it above
multiple
Ocarina of
different
Time.
ideas as well, and adding multiple different content to it. It seems to
Noah, my dude. My brain, I was formulating like defending it against 3D Land, putting it beneath it. I did not plan to argue with about Ocarina of Time. You've knocked me off my center.
You know what? Noah's made a perfect argument. Like it's transcends.
You can't say
Ocarina of
you
Time.
can't say a single bad thing about the game. You can't think of one. And it's
Oh boy,
Okay.
we're doing it. Jeez.
what did you want to say, Saf?
I'll talk for Saf. I vehemently disagree.
No, like what I
Oh,
was gonna
baby.
say is, it seems to be like it not only does what its base game does right, but they also add two very meaningful pieces of content as well, Plague of Shadows and the Reaper one.
Yeah. Spectre of Torment.
Which,
Can't.
yeah, Spectre of Torment, where
I mean,
they've
that's not
done that
too
successfully.
fair
They've changed
to
the
say,
mechanics. They've
Okay.
changed the mechanics greatly, and
Okay.
they've done it successfully. Go on.
Brandon, go.
I don't think it's fair to say, "Whoa, this game added new shit and extra shit," right? Because like, that's
But we're not saying that.
That's this day and age. You
We're
can't
saying-
say
I mean, it takes advantage
you
of
can't
that.
knock it against Ocarina of Time and say, "Well, Ocarina of Time didn't add extra stuff," because, yeah,
No, we're not saying that. We're saying that it's not only does it has variety to it. Like it's got different things that it does well.
I'm split, but I want to ask Saf a question.
Go on.
Would you put Spectre of Torment above like Mega Man 2? Or
Spectre
the
of
whole
Torment?
treasure trove? Treasure
Oh,
trove
Treasure
as
Trove.
a whole. Sorry, my bad.
Yes, I would actually.
Okay.
See, I would too, but that's
I
still
would.
not above Ocarina of Time. But
I
See,
wouldn't put it
because
above Mega Man
because where
2.
my brain is at is that Shovel Knight is, I would say, a near perfect execution of an idea, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
wholeheartedly agree.
I think that the problem is that when you're factoring in this list, do you look at like the execution of the idea, or do you look at like the execution in pairing with what the game did, right? Because I think if we're saying just like the game, you can make an argument for Shovel Knight, but I think that like Ocarina of Time is so monolithic in terms of how people design 3D games and what it was doing at the time that it came out, that people are imitating Ocarina of Time now, right? Like, it is in its own way the progenitor in the same way that like Mega Man 2 is the progenitor of Shovel Knight, and I don't know if I want to rank Shovel Knight above it.
I mean,
It's hard, and I do think
there's nothing against the credibility of what or the doors that it fucking broke down in terms of like what you can do with games. There's nothing against that. What we're talking about is just the quality of this game in this day and age. And there are despite how well it was in the beginning, there are still some aging issues with Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. That is very, very apparent. It's still a great game. It's still got great ideas.
Yeah,
and
it's still a
to be
masterpiece.
still that great, even in this day, is an achievement on its own. However, time has shown that you can make improvements on these ideas, and you can execute these ideas much better. Granted, this isn't Shovel Knight is not the perfect example of something that Zelda has done that they've done better, but it is just what you would kind of expect. Like, we
hard,
should be moving. Yeah, we should be moving on from this idea of like, well, this is started off as something great. It should be forever beholden upon it. That sort of thing. If it's still, we should just actually focus on what has come afterwards and just like the natural revolution of things and what we would expect from games in this day and age.
So
as
I
opposed
think
to
Ocarina
previously.
of Time, I think we're not giving enough credit here about how much it holds up today, right? It is...
No, I totally recognize how much it holds up.
Sure, but I just want to say, like, it is a game that I think you point out its flaws, I would call it nitpicking, to be honest. That's how little of an impact the flaws of Ocarina of Time have to that game, in my opinion. I think it is what you can call a just perfect adventure. just everything's perfectly paced. Everything just works so well in Ocarina of Time that it's hard for me to rank any game really above Ocarina of Time. But
See, I think that there are definitely games I would. I'm just split on whether or not Shovel Knight is one of them.
right,
Yeah, I'm the same way as Will. But and another thing is, going back to what Saf was saying with, that Shovel Knight might be coherently a better game, gameplay-wise, I guess. But I think we can't overlook the fact that the legacy that games have when we rank. Because if we say, well, this game's going to do it better, this game has done what this game did, but better, even though it was inspired by it. And I get that. I really do. But if we keep that way, every game at the top will be the newest games, and that's it, and everything else will go underneath
wouldn't
them
that
no
be
matter
the legacy then?
Well, I
Because
mean,
the
no. At the
legacy is
end of the
what
day,
it
we
pro-
have to find a good balance of everything.
You do
Yeah,
have
I
to
don't.
find-
Yeah, I
yes.
don't want to
Yeah,
discard entirely
Yeah,
the
yeah.
legacy
Like-
thing, but I don't
like,
think it
we
should be
don't
the
wanna-
sole deciding factor either.
It
Well,
has
of course
to be,
not. It
yeah,
is a big
exactly.
part of what made the game what it was. So the
Yeah.
legacy
Yeah.
is- yeah.
Yeah.
And
Obviously,
also,
yes.
it's the reason why it's still number one on this list, despite the fact that Super Mario 3D Land has come out. Like, no one's knocking it on the idea. It's just we need to consider we can't just lift
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
on
looking
its
at it as a
legacy
game,
alone.
right? Because we
Yeah.
should do that. I would say that I'm trying to think because it's hard because I think that just the format of Ocarina of Time is a type of game that I like. I find personally like a thing that I enjoy more. I love those. I love just like walking out in Hyrule Field and like just that sense of adventure, right? Like the way that you feel because you've been trapped in the Deku area for so long that like that moment of elation, like I don't know. I don't know if Shovel Knight ever did that.
Like Shovel Knight is such a good game, but it never had those like specific moments that just make me feel like, oh my god, you know what I mean?
I mean,
Like-
the
It
one
didn't
that
have
I
that
did for
wow
me
factor.
was just Olive Save Her, or like that
Oh,
whole
sure,
thing.
yeah,
The
yeah,
sequencing of that is incredible, but
But Shovel Knight, you've said it yourself, it's not out there to make you have a new experience or exciting experience. It's out to honor the previous experiences and please you in that front. So I don't believe that would be, like, even though that's understandable, I don't believe that would be fair for Shovel Knight because that's not what it's trying to do.
sure.
Well,
Well,
anyone
I
else
mean-
have any arguments, or are we just getting down to voting?
I got nothing. I don't think I'm going to change anybody's mind at this point.
Well, no,
Yeah.
but if you have something to say it now, or forever hold your peace.
Y'all are fucking nuts. You're fucking insane.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's get to voting.
Okay.
I'm keeping it at number 2, personally. I mean, number 2, above Super Mario 3D Land, below Ocarina of Time.
I want to save Will to last. No, it goes.
I'm gonna put it on the top. I'm gonna put it for number 1.
Okay,
above
so I'm
Ocarina
going to
of
put it on
Time.
number 1 as well. I'm assuming, Brandon, you want to put it at number 2?
Brandon says number 2. That's what I
Okay,
said.
so Will, what do you say?
Well, it's on you.
all good. Welcome. I'm gonna put it.
Don't feel pressured. Just
I'm gonna
go with
feel-
what
I'm
you
gonna
feel
put
is
it-
right.
Now we can
Where-
yell at Will.
I'm gonna go with number 2.
Motherfucker!
But with you're right. But with the utmost respect for Shovel Knight, know in my heart that game's incredible.
All right. So that is our first entry to the list. To be honest, it already started more controversial than I thought it would.
Wow,
Dude, good job. Oh my word.
So
When Moose said it, I thought, is this going to be 2 or 3? Who knew I'd be the deciding vote on number 1? Oh my god.
the funny thing is, I think you could, and I think Noah and Sav did make a convincing argument that
They
maybe
did,
it
I
did
agree.
deserve number 1.
I mean, Brandon thinks that we're all crazy, but yes.
Yeah. However, that is now our ranking. Shovel Knight is currently the second best game of all
Lock
time.
it in, baby.
Shovel Knight Treasure
Hard to
Trove,
beat.
actually.
It's gonna be-
Need to be very specific here.
Baby,
If it
looking
was
for
the
number
base
2,
game-
it's gonna be an issue.
Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is number 2 on our list.
When are we gonna rank the original Shovel Knight?
What?
Original Shovel Knight is number 7. It's garbage. It's worse than Sonic 06.
Yep.
One thing I should mention, though, I forgot one rule we have is a game must be a year old before we can officially rank it on the list.
And we at least two of us must have played it.
Yeah,
At least
so-
we can't just have one person being like, "Trust me, this game's really
Yeah,
good."
you have to have somebody argue. Although I feel like we're gonna come across a time where somebody goes, "This is where it goes," and the other person goes, "Hell yeah, you're right," and that's it.
Hey man, that's what happens. Short podcast that week, baby.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's the list. Look forward to it every week. Yeah. Will, off to you. List is done.
Well, I mean, hey, kids, that's the podcast pretty much. We did it. You want to do any plugs? Brandon's the social media guy. Hit the plugs on the stuff that we got.
Yes, do it. If you follow us on Facebook, you'll get plenty of updates of where this is posted and when you can listen. And you'll always know. You'll be able to listen before anybody else.
We are aiming for that Monday release schedule, baby. We're still a little bit of a work in development, so just keep your eye out. We have an RSS feed soon. We should be on SoundCloud, be on YouTube. We'll be everywhere. We got
So I
Facebooks,
can
we got
guarantee we'll
Twitters,
be
got
on YouTube and
Instagrams.
SoundCloud at the beginning. We're working on getting on iTunes and etc. and podcast services very soon. But that might be might be a little delayed. Just wanted to throw that out.
But to get the latest updates, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook at Jump Up Supercast.
Good job, my dudes. Let's say Brandon, Moose, Saf, Noah, thank you for being here. Thanks for the first ever Jump Up Supercast. I did the start and without it at the end to really wrap it all around. And we'll see you all next week. Remember, fly, Eagles, fly.
Fuck you.
Disgusting.
Go Pats.
Bye.